Hello, I am here with my student Jenny, and we are going to talk about cueing. Um, so, just a quick intro, and you have this in your notes, but cueing is really a call to action for our students, and cueing begins the minute that they enter your virtual or live space. We cue students by telling them to get certain props, to how they're setting up. We cue with our body language. We're sending cues left and right. And a cue is really the simplest way to communicate how and when someone can move or perform any action. And basically, your cueing comes down to how, or your teaching and leading comes down to how your cues translate and how they are interpreted by your students. So Jenny, I'd love to just ask you a few questions about how the cues in SSN have felt for you and your experience overall with getting some of the personalized cues. So maybe just share with us what the cueing in the live classes you've attended or even the recordings has felt like.
Well, the queuing for me has helped in a lot of ways, but I think mostly what I've recognized is that it's helped I guess it's helped all of my poses because it brings a lot more awareness and attention to each piece of a pose rather than just, I think I used to feel like, okay, I'm just trying to get to the end posture. And then I feel like because of your cueing, I brought a lot more awareness to each muscle that was being activated or kind of every piece of building up to a pose. And so then it felt like I was getting a lot more out of it. So in standing poses, when you told me to lift up through my inner thigh, it was like engaging a whole different muscle that I'd never really thought about before. And then it really changed the movement of the posture and gave me a lot more mobility, flexibility, strength, and then helped me achieve sort of strength and flexibility throughout the posture, and then gave me a better final pose, if that makes sense.
To me, that makes total sense when we look at, and this is part of the sequencing and class system modules, but when we look at the end pose, which is often how we can set up a class, whether it's flow or bend beyond belief. Let's say, and today we're going to focus on bird of paradise. I know that pose, and you'll know that pose involves shoulder flexibility, back bending, hamstring flexibility, but it also requires balance. So I can either break that pose down by going, I need to warm up the hamstrings, I need to warm up the shoulders, I need to warm up the back, or I can say, I have to also work on balance. So while certain muscles are being warmed up, there also needs to be a focus on the intention of why we're warming up certain muscles, not just to get to point B, because otherwise all we're teaching in Bird of Paradise is hamstrings, back, and shoulders. And what we want to be able to teach is balance, so that if Jenny decides now I want to do a different balancing posture, she doesn't have to say, okay, now I have to warm up all those muscles and I'm totally unprepared. Because the goal is that whatever movement we're doing in each class, whether it's a pre-recorded class or a live class, there's a takeaway that gets to transform your movement practice. And Jenny may need hamstring, back, and shoulder flexibility for the rest of her day, but my guess is she certainly needs a sense of balance and a sense of physical balance, which, Jenny, if you had to guess, what are we activating physically? And Jenny I did not coach her. What are we activating physically in order to create balance? Where does it come from?
So that's another thing I love about your cues. I feel like my balance got a lot better when you brought a lot of focus into kind of using my entire foot. And then it created sort of this up the chain reaction where engaging my inner thigh helped kind of square off my hips or whatever it is, but it was sort of from the root of my foot up the leg. And then I felt like I was engaging muscles that I didn't know how to turn on before, because I was sort of using my arch and then it just kind of changed everything and engaged all of the muscles rather than just sort of dumping into my major muscles and relying on them, like clenching them so that I, didn't wobble and fall over.
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of this work is from the ground up, because a lot of it is standing, or it's really, we're looking at what is the foundation. And the first part of the cueing system is to get someone into their foundational stance, which is often sitting, standing, kneeling, or some version of lying down. And then what we want to look at are the points of contact with the floor. So if Jenny's trying to balance on one foot, and we don't talk about the foot, we talk about all the other things, we might have certain areas of her body primed for movement, but an unsteady foundation. So the foundational stance denotes how we're setting a pose up, but also the points of contact, meaning points of contact with the floor, or if it's a seated pose on a chair, how those get to engage. And the biggest component that's brought to life with balance is a core connection. Without our center being strong, which translates to our center being strong off of our mats too. There's a lot of research about how when we connect to our core, we also are getting closer to our core beliefs. We get to think about them more. We get to find a path to what we feel and what we believe in, which can sound esoteric, but it really makes a lot of sense because we're streamlining the process. It's similar to, I don't want to just teach or think of Bird of Paradise being about 3 to 5 kinds of flexibility, but what the pose really means. And being able to balance on one foot with one leg far overhead and your shoulders open, that shows pride and balance and strength and focus. And so we can look at a pose, and both are equally valid from the physical component, but also the qualities we need to be building. And whether Jenny has a Bird of Paradise with her foot straight up to the ceiling, or if she has her knee to her shoulder and the leg doesn't extend, those same qualities get to come to play. They get to join the party. And those kinds of layers of cues will reach every student that you teach. And if we're cueing from the goal of everyone's foot has to be over their head, we will alienate. And the goal is to always be inclusive, even if everyone can do the most intense version of a posture. How does that feel for you, Jenny?
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. It sounds, I think that also just thinking about the core in standing postures and how you've given me cues that have helped me engage my lower core, and then it also helps me tuck my tailbone and gives me just sort of like it continues the chain of just feeling more stabilized.
Yeah, at the end of the day, and you'll hear this throughout the course, we really teach great ways to sit and great ways to stand, which wouldn't necessarily look super stunning on a flyer or a piece of marketing. But when sitting and standing become easier, and when they become much more eye-opening in terms of how we're carrying ourselves. If I don't notice that when I'm sitting, I sit like this habit of my head jutting forward is really going to prevent me from doing a more advanced posture. Everything that we do sitting and standing shows up as we keep moving. We really take how we are and how we inhabit our bodies through every movement that we do. It's not like changing our outfit. It's structural. So the foundational stance is the way that you get students to get started. And we believe that movement really changes the game on how we feel, and it does actually change us on a cellular level. Therefore, getting someone moving is the second most important part of leading, but we first have to get them started. So, and that can sometimes be the trickiest part is you know the exercise you want to teach, but getting someone to stand or sit in a certain way can be really difficult. So I'm just going to give a quick rundown of the way I see cueing clarity. And again, cueing is a call to action. It's a way to get students moving, and movement is a huge change agent. We're always looking to create change in how people feel, obviously in the positive direction. And then I will lead Jenny through some movement. So the first thing that we're going to want to do is get someone into a foundational stance. And so Jenny, I'm going to just lead you through a few different movements or stances rather. So Jenny's already sitting. So Jenny, let's stand up and come to sit on the edge of your chair. Perfect. So she's sitting, and that's 100% great. And if I had 10 other people in the room, I would have said, all right, everyone, make your way to sit on the edge of your chair. And that may sound simple, but if people are talking and doing their own thing, moving from A to B can be really difficult. If I wanted to make this more specific, I could say, Jenny, ground your heels and point your toes straight forward. Perfect. And then from here, just inhale and sit up a bit taller. Perfect. And then exhale, see if you can drop your shoulders a bit. Great. Inhale, lift up through your waist. Feel yourself get a bit taller. And as you exhale, push your heels into the mat. Perfect. Let's try that 3 more times. So Jenny's in a foundational stance. And then I gave her a basic cue. The basic cue involves a verb, and then a body part, and then a direction or action from there. So I said, sit, ground heels, down. And then from there, we can add a layered cue, which would be breath. So I could say, as you sit, and that reminds students they're still sitting, because often I'm not demonstrating, and you don't have to either. As you sit, inhale and lift your shoulders up to your ears. And then exhale, sigh, lower your shoulders down away from your ears. Perfect. Inhale, lift shoulders up, grow taller. Exhale, lower shoulders down, soften your jaw. Great, let's try that 3 more times. Now I've given the exercise an endpoint, which often is really important, whether it's more easeful movement or challenging. Students like to know that they're not there forever. And you can give an endpoint in terms of try this 3 more times on your own, or we'll be here for 30 seconds, or count them down. I avoid counting excessively because there's usually a better use of your capacity to cue. And then from here, I'll add just another basic movement. Let's inhale, lift arms up. So lift is my verb, arms are the noun, and then up is the direction. Exhale, lower arms down. Perfect. Inhale, lift arms and gaze up. Beautiful, that looks great. And then exhale, lower your arms down, push firmly into your heels. Beautiful. Try that 3 more times, Jenny. See if your arms can go all the way back by your ears. Yeah. And then exhale, lower. What I did was pose a question. Inhale, lift arms up, set your gaze high. Seeing if the arms can go back by the ears, that's perfect. Exhale, lower. And this time, see if your arms can reach behind you as you look down. Yeah, perfect. Inhale, reach arms up. And I'm doing this partially in case she needs to see, or sometimes I really want to feel the movement in my body. It will bring a cue up that maybe I hadn't thought of. Good. And this next few, Jenny, as your arms reach back, try to turn your palms up to the ceiling. Yeah, exactly. And did that change anything in how your shoulders felt?
Yes, it made them feel a little more just rotated and open.
Awesome. So this is, and then Jenny, you can finish after this one. This is an arm lift, and it's not complex, but how did the progression of cues feel in your body?
Really easy to follow and just, yeah, I mean,
Great.
it made sense. Felt like the natural next step.
And did it feel like the exercise was able to keep your attention a bit more?
Yes,
Awesome. And that's a huge component of how we cue is the cues need to add value. Your first job is to get students moving. Then there's a lot of assessment. The first assessment is anyone in danger. It would be unlikely in an arm lift that Jenny's in danger, but maybe I'm noticing that her shoulder is kind of spazzing and she keeps moving. A very simple thing to cue is if this doesn't feel right for you, then you can say modify or reach arms up to the point before you feel a painful sensation. If you have students going for a while, you can say that you can talk about the difference between pain and a new sensation because they can get confusing. New sensation might feel different, and painful is wincing, and that's our indicator. If I'm in a private session, I can have much more of an open dialogue with Jenny specifically. If there's even 3 people in your class, upwards of however many you choose to admit, posing these general questions helps to keep everyone safe. You can also say, if you can pause, and I invite that in the beginning of class. If anything doesn't feel right, take a pause. I'll find you, chat me if it's virtual, raise your hand. All of these things invite a student to feel really a piece of their experience versus that they're performing for you as the teacher. So the cue about how to lift your arms is as important as the cue that says rest when you need to, because a student may come to class and want to move for half of the time. And if that's okay for them and you let them know that's okay, they may move more as time progresses, but you've earned their trust. And we are all likely to listen to cues from someone we trust more than someone that has either a dogmatic approach or very rigid approach to movement. Um, and Jenny, I know that you work with mental health. Does that feel like it makes sense to you in terms of how to guide someone?
absolutely.
Awesome. So first assessment for movement is, are students in danger? That may require that you really jump in, but it may just require letting someone know. And you could say Jenny had been doing. Let me give a practical example. Okay, Jenny, let's come down to all fours, so 2 hands and 2 knees. Great, and then step your right foot forward in between your hands. Awesome. From here, and I'm going to cue you into misalignment that's not going to injure you, but is less than ideal. Slide your right heel back about 5 inches. Yes, great. So this would be a low lunge that I've set Jenny up in. Her foundational stance was all fours. I said, lower down to 2 hands and 2 knees. You could say, come to all fours. It's also known as quadruped. Well, we got there. And then I said, step your right foot forward between your hands. She was able to do that very easily. And now I've just cued her back into a less than ideal position. From here, Jenny, we're going to repeat the arm lift that we just did seated. So on your next inhale, reach your arms up and overhead. Great. On your exhale, lower your arms down to the floor and maybe sweep them behind you. Good. Let's keep going. Try that 5 more times. So if I was teaching a group class and Jenny was one of many squares or one of many people on mats in front of me, I might not notice her knee right away. I could be cueing. Continue to check if your front heel is underneath your front knee. And then, great. But let's say, and Jenny, could you pretend that didn't make sense to you for a second? If I've given that cue and a few people who are doing something similar were able to adjust it, but Jenny has not for whatever reason, she's somewhere else, she's doesn't realize, there's 100 different thoughts. I could say, great, everyone lower your hands to the floor on either side of your foot. And now look at your inner knee and look at your inner ankle and try to make that line straight. Great, so Jenny gets it once again, but maybe she didn't get that in that moment. This is where, and this involves two components of the cueing. It's very important to gain consent on how you can cue someone. Many people love and thrive on personalized cues. It's one of the strongest parts of SSN, but it does not mean everyone has to say yes. So when you're starting your class and you set the tone, grab 2 blocks, make sure you have a blanket, et cetera, you can ask students individually, whether it's virtual or in person, are you comfortable with me cueing you individually? Are you comfortable with me approaching you? Or say you have 50 people in your Zoom class, you can say, if you are uncomfortable, because the likelihood is more people are comfortable than not. If you are uncomfortable with me cueing you personally, put a 1 in the chat. And or if it's in person, everyone come to child's pose, raise your hand if you're uncomfortable, or close your eyes. Now, if Jenny was one of those people who was uncomfortable, I could say, from here, step your foot back. I could just change the exercise completely. That's sort of my last ditch effort. And yeah, so Jenny, bring your right knee back. Great. Perfect. And then the other thing I could do, and I'll have you switch sides, Jenny, so step your left foot forward in between your hands. Great. And again, step, that's the action. And I said you don't have to. I could just say step left foot. And then where's it going? In between hands. So we're constantly leading with a verb versus a lot of other movement or a lot of other words. We want that call to action so that she can get moving and not be waiting and waiting and waiting, which can be a thing. One cue I could have given is to have her move her back knee back. Maybe it wasn't making sense. So Jenny, will you scoot your left foot back a few inches? Great. So maybe it's not making sense when I've given different cues for the heel to come forward. But Jenny, try, or everyone, let's scoot your back knee back. Excellent. And you can continue to watch classes and observe different ways that happens. But there's always a few ways. If the front foot isn't working, maybe it's from the back foot. If something sitting isn't working, maybe you transition the work to standing and then come back. And then Jenny, just to make you even, let's inhale, lift your arms all the way up and overhead. Good, beautiful. And then lift up through your waist, perfect. Exhale, pull your navel towards your spine as your arms reach back. Perfect. Inhale, lift your arms up. Feel as though my hands are on your ribs, pulling them away from your hips. So that's largely directional. And then exhale, pull your lower abs in as you reach your arms back. Perfect. And let's do one more. And now I'm going to purposely be silent so that she can just feel how that exercise lands. Beautiful. When you're ready, lower your hands to the floor, step your left knee back, and sit your hips back onto your heels. Great. And so the reverse of getting out of an exercise is giving someone an exit. So we're often, if you were writing your cues out, you would recite them in reverse. And that's really important. You never want to leave someone in a precarious position. So the questions, once you have someone moving and you've given them depth, you've given them a layered cue, you've posed a question, you've already gained consent, so you can give an individual cue. We've assessed danger. Is once you have students moving, but you realize maybe their arms are just up and down, and there's not a lot of intention. You can give, of course, these deeper cues, but you might say, okay, it feels like you're just reaching your arms up. What if you were reaching your arms up for something important? And these questions, again, you don't dictate what's important to someone in your class, saying, reach up for a diamond ring or reach up for X, Y, or Z. It's all about how can the people that you're leading have a more embodied experience? How can the movement get to a deeper level? And as I was teaching Jenny, she started seated with the arms lifting, so she knew that skill. So adding it to the next foundational stance of her lunge, you didn't have to learn that at the same time, right, Jenny? And then we could add the feeling of the ribs lifting. We use the first exercise to translate to the second, and that's often how we want to build our classes. Is not, oh, I like this exercise and I like this one and this one. It's really how, much like poetry or song lyrics, how do they go together? And this comes up in every module, but what is your why in teaching something? If we don't have a pulse on the why, it's just movement, which again is a catalyst for change and something will be achieved. But everyone's spending the same amount of time in each class. Therefore, how can we elevate it? Our cues, the mindset work, the sequence are all there to elevate your why as a leader. And also, as a student, Jenny, why do you show up to move? Like in my class, in another class, like what in general would describe that?
For me, I think I started enjoying this type of movement because of the physical, just kind of getting more balance and flexibility and strength. And then I felt like when I got more engaged with it, it also translated into, first of all, having a space where I got to really meditate a little bit, because it's so difficult that it's a place where all I can think about is engaging my inner thigh so I don't fall over when my leg is up over my head. And so that sort of translated into having more balance and flexibility just in life. And I also feel like, so when you were saying that there's this sequence, when I was sitting at first and you told me to dig my heels in, it made me engage my core. So then when I was down, when you told me to sort of again, and sort of bring my stomach in, and then I was like, oh yeah, I've already done that. But then I feel like there's that translation as well, where I feel like now part of what I've gained from your teaching is that I can go skiing and I'm reminded to do those things, but it's almost like muscle memory now, where I don't feel like I used to engage my core when I was skiing, but now it's something that kind of clicks in because the movement has applied itself to other areas in my life.
I love hearing that. And that's where, so as we discussed from the beginning, when we look at a pose, there's the physical components that need to come in. And often that's areas of flexibility. And we can bring those wherever we go. But specifically, core strength is required. I don't really believe that there's a core exercise and then a leg exercise. Absolutely, certain parts of the body are highlighted, but core strength is something that we can bring everywhere, and it will absolutely transform how you ski, you horseback ride, how you pick up your toddler or your groceries. And that's where this gift is all about, giving someone an experience of understanding their body. So we use the poses as a vehicle for body awareness, for a connection. And as Jenny said, by my telling her to dig her heels in, that's a different cue than engage your core or pull navel to spine. And all of those cues are valid, but it might be a lot in the beginning. Jenny had her feet on the floor so she could feel them dig in, because she already had an awareness. She'd already had to stand up. often we dive too deep too quickly, and therefore we lose people. And by losing people early on in class, it's harder to bring them back. So the cues in the beginning can be complex, but there has to be that priming, that building rapport with the student, and often starting with movement that, likely we can all get a group of 5-year-olds to do this. Would they be able to then feel their heels dig in? Maybe yes, maybe no, maybe stomp their feet. The goal is that the cues at their most basic level, so this is the basic cueing formula: verb, body part, direction, that would work for 5-year-olds, that would work for grown-ups, and then you get to add. But if you start with so much that you've missed the basic, I wouldn't want to say, all right, we're going to inhale beautifully, come into the one-legged plank, and deepen your exhale. It's just like, hi. We all need time to get from whatever's happening in our lives into a place where we can hear the cues in the mat. It does not mean if a cue is too complex for the first moments that it's too complex for the class. And there's generally not bad cues. There can be cues that are less clear, but it's all about, have I primed my students' bodies and brains and mindset for that level of cueing? Because an Olympic tennis player could get a cue that they're just waking up and it doesn't work, even though they perform at an Olympic level. And so our cues are only as good as we can really break them down and get someone from A to B. The layering is always next. It's like an actor can't be given a cue on how to deliver a line until they know their line. So until a student knows the objective of an exercise or sequence, all other brilliant cues will just go here. Oh, you said something about elegantly or lift this, but lift what? Because I'm still waiting to do X, Y, or Z. Does that feel like it resonates as a student?
Yes, absolutely.
And then lastly, and it may be surprising that it's last, but I was putting in some breath cues, and students may or may not follow them. I can't always know whether I'm in person or virtual if that's happening specifically, but knowing that students are breathing is incredibly important. So cues around breath, even if you're using them as I did, inhale, lift arms up, exhale, lower arms down. Inhale, reach one leg long, exhale, lower leg down. Great. A student may completely ignore that. They may be firing too much in their mind to hear that, even though it's suggested. So making sure that you sometimes say, when you can, exhale, and then zip it, because it may take a student a moment, and I experienced this as a student, to realize that they've been holding their breath for like a long time. Or when you're ready, let's all take in a big inhale and really demonstrate that. Again, the best way to lead is often not through demoing, because then you cannot be witnessing your students. It absolutely has a place. We're trying with cueing clarity to make your verbal cueing so strong that you can really be walking around your in-person class or hooked up to your Zoom class really clearly, so that you can be watching and observing everyone's movement. But if lost my train of thought. You want to make sure that breath is mentioned. That's the most important thing, is that it is a part of your class. It is not dogmatic. It is not everything has to be perfect. That's really advanced, because breathing is one of the only things that we are unconsciously doing all of the time. So to go in and try to change the design of someone's breath pattern is really, really deep work. It's absolutely valid to teach and to lead. But if that becomes shinier than everything else, you may lose people, and it can be very anxiety inducing. So breath is, there's suggested breath, and then there's also just the reminder to breathe in a style that works for your students. And that may be the only time that they hear or think about breathing in their whole day, week, month, depending on how often they're coming to class. Um, Great. So that actually would have been useful. I taught a workshop in like December and did not record.
Oh no.
And I was so, it was so sad because it was like, it was, not just that it was brilliant, but like I wanted to send it to everyone. And it was like I've recorded every class ever except for this one. Great news. Okay, so now we're going to apply this cueing system in a way that gets us to a more or a very complex pose, which is bird of paradise. And Jenny has never done that, which I think is really exciting because by following these steps, we can use them for arm lifts or bird of paradise or anything in between. By learning this system, you can actually teach really anything. If you can use it to coach tennis or soccer or skiing or get someone to make you a smoothie because our cues are really, and this is an important aspect of cues, we use them all of the time. Some are more effective than others, but cues are really just calling ourselves. We cue ourselves for sure. Get out of bed. Great, that's the task, and then we accomplish it. Our cues are what determine so much of what happens in our own lives and around us and in our relationships. So improving our cueing is really a way of improving communication on things that we want to do, want to accomplish. And the clearer we get and the faster or more efficient we can apply them, it brings us to our goals more quickly. And that's where really understanding how to cue helps to teach these complex poses, which we're about to experience. Because if the trust is built with Jenny to get her to sit and stand, that trust can translate into doing something she's never done before. And we are all likely to do things we've never done before if we're already in an environment of trust and understanding. And that's really the goal of a cue, is to build that foundation from the moment someone enters your classroom, is to get them to trust you so they're willing to try something that maybe wouldn't have been on their list, and to do it in a way that's not sneaky but just has a feeling of a natural rhythm. And that's where this class system and the sequencing comes into play. So without further ado, we're going to do Bird of Paradise. And so Jenny, let's come to sit in the edge of your chair, your feet hip distance apart, and then just lift the shoulders up, lower them down. Take a moment to close your eyes. Use your next few breaths to think of creating length in your spine. Allow your shoulders to open a bit. And then I'd love for you to just try on the following mindset. We all have ways that we think and feel about ourselves and the day. And for now, for the next, let's say 30 minutes, see if the following phrase is something you can bring with you throughout this class. I can do more than I know. Inhale, I can do. Exhale, more than I know. Perfect. Inhale, lift shoulders up, I can do. Exhale, lower shoulders down, more than I know. Inhale, lift shoulders up, I can do. Exhale, lower shoulders down, more than I know. And try that 2 more times on your own. Excellent. And then as you're ready, let your eyes open. Move in a way that feels useful if you want to shake anything off, if feels like anything is in need of a release. And then for this shape, we'll end up needing to open up the shoulders quite a bit, back, hamstrings, and get your core involved. So let's lean your torso forward and place your hands palms down on the top of the chair. Great, let's just put them all the way up on the very highest point of the back of the chair. Perfect. From here, push the heels of your hands and heels of your feet down. Inhale, lift your chin and let your front body lengthen. Beautiful. Exhale, push your hands and heels into their surfaces. Look down. Inhale, lift your gaze, opening your collarbones. Exhale, lower your gaze, push your hands and feet into their surfaces. Great. Try this 3 more times. Big inhale. And then exhale, ground down, exhale. Perfect. So nice. Inhale, lift up, going into extension or a back bend. And then exhale, look down. We're rounding our spine, going into flexion. Good. Let's do one more. Hold here at the top, and if you can, take in a big inhale. Awesome. Huge sigh as you round your spine and look down. Great. And now inhale, lift your gaze, reach your arms out wide, and then all the way overhead. Perfect. Bend your elbows, grab onto your upper arms. Great. And so I'm demoing here purposefully because that's a maybe strange cue or not obvious, and I can easily from seated show her that. Jenny, let's lift your ribs up and start a little rotation from side to side. So dig your heels into the floor, dig your sit bones that you're sitting on into the chair, and let this rotation really be about your upper body from above the navel. Awesome. How does that feel?
Really good.
Yeah. So I'm noticing that Jenny is, her knees are moving a little bit, which is super normal. So a cue I would give and will give is, Jenny, try to keep your knees still as you keep rotating. Now she may get that right away. That may feel like my knees aren't moving. And so in order to make myself not over explain or be annoying, I could also say, look at your knees, everyone. And if you see them moving, try to keep them still. Even if Jenny's knees are moving and she looks, but she doesn't believe that they're moving, no amount of cueing I can give will convince her of that, most likely. So picking battles, she's not in danger if her knees move. It's just a way I'd like this pose to shake out. So even if Jenny were to keep moving her knees from side to side, this is not, it's a pick your battles, pick your cues kind of moment. Great, they're still moving, everything is fine. From here, Jenny, lift your arms up all the way and then interlace your hands and flip your palms up to the ceiling. Start to lift and lower your shoulders like a really massive shoulder shrug. Perfect. And then can you feel your waist lift as your shoulders lift?
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. And I can see it because her shirt gets longer and more stretched out, and then it gets just a little bit more relaxed as her shoulders lower. So I'm looking for visual cues. I can ask Jenny so that she's participating and feeling that action. Great. Jenny, can you do this with your arms back by your ears? Perfect. How does that feel? And does it feel any different than a moment ago?
Yes, it feels good, but it feels harder and like my shoulders are opening up more.
Great. So from an alignment perspective, what I'm cueing Jenny into is having her shoulders be stacked over her hips, her elbows over her shoulders, and her wrists over her elbows. She was about here, and now by doing that, we're able to open her shoulders more. So there's a lot of ways I could have just said, open your shoulders, but harder to understand with your palms interlaced. So by giving a directional cue, she gets the result of opening her shoulders, but it was done a little bit differently. Another cue I could give is, and Jenny, let me know if your arms are gonna fall off, but if my arms are here, and I'm exaggerating, if I look up, I can see them. When my arms are here, I look up and I can't see them. So I could say to Jenny, and Jenny, let's just bring your arms forward for a second. Lift your gaze, so not chin, but just my eyeballs. Lift your gaze. If you can see your hands, move them back so that you can see them less or not see them at all. And then that is a different way. That's a visual cue that involves Jenny in her own experience versus your arms are still in front of you. Your arms are in front of you. Put your arms behind. You don't. We've all had that class or felt that feeling. And then Jenny, let's just slowly release your arms out, wide and down. Cool. Are you feeling a little bit warmer?
Yes.
Perfect. So basic movement that we've added a lot of intention to. From here, Jenny, let's place your hands on the edge of the chair. That's great. And then if you can, just lower your knees one at a time to the mat. So you'll be kneeling in front of the chair. Great. Turn your fingers to face the back of the chair. That's perfect. And then shift your hips forward. So more of a true extension, almost like you're hanging off of the chair. Exactly. So hip bones stretch in front of your knees. Beautiful. So she's opening her chest, opening her shoulders, opening the hip flexors. And then exhale, come to more of a neutral spine. Back to the beginning. Perfect. Inhale, shift hips forward, look up. Great. And then dig your hands into the chair for stability. Bring your hips back over your knees. Good. Try that a few more times. And it might not happen right away, but see if you can lengthen your tailbone down towards the back of your knees. Yes. Excellent. So I was seeing Jenny's shirt bunch up a little bit at her lower back. Super normal in this stance or any sort of back bend to shorten the back chain of the body. And by drawing her tailbone down towards the back of her knees, the pelvis changes. I could also say, lift your front hip bones up. And that's going to, well, you tell me, how does that feel if I say, so shift your hips forward, Jenny. And now think of lifting your hip bones up towards your rib cage. Good. Does that feel physically similar as the last cue?
The last one was easier for me to register. That one was a little more complicated.
Yes, I would totally agree. And so whether it's a basic cue or this is way past basic cue. This is very specific. This is a layered cue if you're looking at the system to where would you place this kind of cue. And the reason I first chose the lower back cue or the tailbone cue is because there's tension in the lower back. So when we're looking at a pose, again, we talked about this earlier, pain is often an indicator of a pattern that's just not ideal for us or really not ideal for us. So we can generally assume that tension or a shortening, and you can even see that this part of my skin is kind of bunching, I can go to pain faster than I can go to something that feels great because pain is more like a flashing light. So by thinking of taking my tailbone, which is right here, and drawing it down, look at what happens to my hip bone, because the second cue I gave was to lift the hip bone. It goes from being down to being up. A way to break cues down is to notice, okay, when I lead from the tailbone, what happens? My lower back lengthens. If something's happening in the back of the body, we can assume it's also happening or something is happening in the front of the body. We're not flat. And often I think of how can I change the structure, or we talk about the architecture. And if the tailbone needs to come down, that means the hip bones, right? Because if this is my pelvis in a neutral zone, back of the pelvis, front of the pelvis, let's say you have great anatomical positioning, being upright, it's always like this. But then you go into a back bend and create that crunch. So there's tension right here at the lower back. I don't want to just know that by lowering my tailbone, it lowers. Obviously, that's the result we're looking for. I want to also know what else is affected. Because if these are the hip bones and then they lift, great. But what's underneath the hip bones that also has to lengthen? The quads. Sorry. So we are often cueing from a bony landmark stance because everyone has the same skeleton. So if I cue from the tailbone versus your glutes, because I could misinterpret that and just, you can see this, especially in these hands, squeeze to like lower the tailbone, then I kind of have one butt. And that is also going to create more tension, right? This is tension. But if I lower the tailbone, not only does my actual pelvis lift, but my quads, which are kind of hanging out and just waiting to be activated, they lengthen as well, right? And this is one of the most, this cue could be used, a lot of women stand like this in general. So knowing how to cue the tailbone down or to lift the hip bones up, or you could also have, and Jenny's hands were occupied, but you could have someone release their hands, place one hand on the front of their belly, one hand on their lower back, and try to use their hands to create equilibrium across the pelvis. So what that cue could sound like is press your hands firmly into the front and back of your body, and then try to draw your back body down while lifting your front body up. And I would personally, and there's always an argument for any breath style, but say exhale as you lower the back body, lift the front body. Now, let's say, and Jenny's doing great, keep a physical snapshot of how that feels. Place your hands on the back of the chair one more time. Push your hands down, and now shift your hips forward. Keep the length in the back body. Great. Now exhale, come back to more of a neutral spine. Good. Inhale, shift hips forward. Continue to lengthen your tailbone down. Great. Exhale, return hips to neutral. Let's try just one more. Beautiful. And then relax your arms. How did that feel to learn it, not in the exercise, and then bring it back?
It felt really good. It made a lot of sense, and it helped to sort of break it down. And I also felt like, again, it was like doing that action of being able to push sort of gently down and pulling up through the front was, again, a re-engagement of my core, which made the movement feel more like it had more purpose.
Awesome. And yes, we are communicating purpose over and over. And while Jenny got the cue before from the tailbone, it's also very valid to realize maybe the class is not grasping, or one person is not grasping something that you profoundly believe is important. Not because it's nitpicky, but because it's a purpose or it's a technique. And that technique of adjusting your pelvis is like one of the most important things that we teach, because that is what makes sitting and standing and core work much more easy to access. By getting our bones in correct alignment, we can get the soft tissue, the muscles, to do so much more. If our internal structure is quite off, everything else, from the inside out, everything else is affected. So by getting the bones in as close to correct alignment as possible, or even offering them a suggestion, then everything on top gets to translate in a clearer way. And people love to learn things like that, especially once I've already got them moving. Starting the class like that might be challenging because people come with that energy of, I'm here to move. Once you have someone moving and you've dusted off the layers of whatever was happening in their outside life, the receptivity to learning a technique increases dramatically. So it's knowing your audience, it's playing to your audience, and that just means working smarter, not harder. So now we will move on from there. Jenny, we're going to have you kneel facing me. So your left side will be next to the chair, and place your left hand palm down on the chair. I'm going to push your hand down firmly, and now stretch your hips away from the chair and reach your right arm up and overhead. Beautiful, nice. And then exhale, return to neutral and lower your right arm down. Inhale, lift your arm up. Once it's up, press your hips far away from the chair. Beautiful, nice. And then exhale, lower your arm down. Perfect. We'll try this about 5 to 8 more times. You can keep your eyes open or closed. And then try to shift your left hip bone a bit further forward towards me. Yes. Good. And did that make it easier or harder to side bend?
Harder.
Yeah. When someone side bends, and Jenny, you can keep moving, we kind of turn it into a forward bend. So instead of true side, we bend forward, which means the opposite hip often goes back because it becomes a diagonal reach. By keeping the hip bones in straight ahead alignment, then we're really opening up the side body. But it means we get less far, which can be, if you're feeling like I'm reaching so far, it's this great successful feeling. And then once the hips get into correct positioning, there's less mobility at first, but it makes it more sustainable and sets Jenny up for, as she goes into bigger side bends and bigger bending, that her hips know how to find center. And then let's hold on this next one. Beautiful. Point your left hip bone a bit further forward, and then little pulses out with your outer hip away from the chair. Good. Soften your shoulders down. And if it feels better, look down at the chair if you feel tension in your neck or jaw. And so we're removing tension in order for her to feel a deeper sensation in her outer side body. Always, what can we do? What can we remove to heighten the sensation we're trying to achieve? Whether that's a modification, a gaze, a cue about softening, that's important. Beautiful, Jenny. And now lift your arm all the way up and lower it down to your side. If possible, step your left foot up onto the chair. So you'll be in a very strange lunge. Great. Do you feel like a little too close to the chair maybe?
Yeah.
Okay. And the reason I knew that is because it just looked like she couldn't be comfortable there. And it doesn't mean it's wrong or bad, it's just an observation. And so if Jenny had not been kneeling, I could have cued her to step further away from the chair. But making those changes is really important and lets students know that you're watching them. Jenny, let's place your hands behind your head and push your head actively back into your hands. Beautiful. From there, pull your elbows a bit wider and try to point your left hip bone towards me. Yes, good. From here, lift up a bit taller. Perfect. And dig your left heel into the chair. Great. On your inhale, side bend, sliding your left elbow inside your left knee. Great. Hold there for a moment, and let's just do a few pulses back with your top elbow. So I'm specifically not saying right elbow because when you can avoid right-left cueing, it's great. We know what top is, we know what bottom is a bit more. And again, this is new vocabulary for Jenny. We haven't done really any of these exercises together. Great. From there, focus on pulsing your bottom elbow down towards the chair. Good. As that happens, can you rotate your left hip bone forward? Yes. That's great. Beautiful. Now, lower your bottom hand down onto the chair inside your foot. Great. 5 times, we'll stretch your top arm towards the top of the chair and then press your hand back behind your head. Good. Exhale, reach, reach, reach. And then inhale, bend and tap your head. Beautiful. Think of me pulling your elbow away from your shoulder. Yes. And keep your right outer hip stacked over your right knee. Yeah. Good. So I'm already visualizing that Jenny is going to need to balance on one leg, ideally with her hips stacked over her knees versus knocked out or into the side. So we start to set this stance up right from the gate. Beautiful. That's perfect. And now, Jenny, lift your chest up, lower your right arm down, and then extend your left leg out straight on the chair if there's room. Kind of rest it. Yeah, it's great. Perfect. From here, bring your hands behind your head one more time, and then lift up through your ribs. Think of pulling your top elbow all the way to your toes. Let it go out as far as you can. Amazing. And then exhale, lift back up till you're upright. Good. 4 more times like that. Lift first to create length. Yes. Beautiful. And where do you feel this the most?
In my left hip, and then the stretch and strength when I'm coming back up here.
Yeah. Which part of your left hip?
Just when I come down, there's sort of, it's not pain, but it's like, I guess just, I don't know, like a tightening maybe.
Yeah. So there, what she's diving into is her outer glute, and that has to stabilize a lot so that she does not fall over. And the obliques, the side core muscles, are stretching as she goes down, and they are strengthening in order to lift her up. She has no momentum here. And hold there just for a moment, Jenny. Lower your bottom hand onto the chair or even the forearm if that reaches. Yeah, and place it inside your leg. That's perfect. From here, little pulses down, trying to get your elbow to touch exactly. Good. 3, 2. Now keep your elbow down. Stretch your top arm overhead and see if maybe you can almost touch the chair. Yep, exactly. Great. And now you've anchored onto that. See if you can grab it and think of little pulses rotating your top shoulder up to the ceiling. Yes, so we've let her come forward a little bit in order to feel that deeper opening. Excellent. 3, 2, beautiful. And then Jenny, lift your chest up all the way, lower your arm down, and then step your left knee down to the floor. We're gonna grab the hand towel that you have and then place the hand towel, the center of it, underneath your left foot on the chair. We're gonna go back into that kneeling lunge with your foot or your knee bent. Perfect. And now take your left hand and grab both ends, sorry, not your left hand, side bend towards the chair and have your right hand reach overhead and grab both ends of the towel. Yes, and if a hand towel does not work for someone here, they could use a TheraBand, which would stretch, or a very long towel, or a yoga strap. Good, so Jenny has her hand resting in front and then her other hand holding onto the towels. Take a moment and just like we were trying to before, open your top shoulder a bit. Yeah. And I'm guessing that feels pretty massive in your side body. So what the towel does is instead of Jenny having to grab her foot and feel congested, the towel extends her arm. So a prop is always going to fill in an area where we want or need support so that we can feel something with less strain and then translate that action. From here, start to lift your leg up that's on the chair using the towel. Great. That's a feeling. And now bend your knee, lower your foot down. So knowing what you know about how that feels, you can adjust your grip if you want. Less towel, more towel. Perfect. And now try that a few more times. Exhale, lift, and inhale, lower. Nice. Good. As you keep going, continue to point your left hip forward towards me. Good. This next time, we'll keep your leg lifted. Now, start to lift your chest up more and pull your leg up towards that same ear. So left leg pulls up towards the ear. Exactly. So you're using the strength of your arm, the flexibility of your leg, and a lot of core work to balance here. Great. Awesome. Let's try 3. Lift from your breastbone, and that will help to open the front body. Yeah. Woo. Last time, hold there. And then inhale, lift your chest more. Exhale, bend your elbow more deeply, pull the leg to you, and now we're going to slowly bend back. Exactly. Foot lands, release your arm, and lower your foot down or your knee down. Great. Just for kicks, stand up on your knees, so knees down, butt lifted, and just start to side bend from side to side. Which side is easier to touch the floor on or get closer to the floor on?
Definitely my left side by a lot. I feel like I'm not even close on there.
And it's even if you could touch the floor on both sides, it's more about, and let me know if this sounds correct, we've created a lot of elasticity and heat on your left side. So reaching over to the right, on your right side. So reaching over to the left is just more accessible. It's not always about the exact result that I can see, but it's about how you get to feel. And that's the real kicker, is like, do you get to feel like something you can do is actually easier? And then think of how many things in life would be great if maybe the result didn't change, but they just felt easier to achieve. Like, I would sign up for all of that. We want the tasks that we're already doing to become more accessible. They don't have to have a radically different outcome in how they appear, but in how we approach and get to that end result. If that can feel better, that's massive in my mind. All right, with that being said, let's go to the other side. So I'll just have you stand up, move your chair to the other end of the mat, and we'll do that sequence. Okay, so you're kneeling, lift your hips up, perfect. And then we're gonna reach your arm up and side bend towards the chair. Perfect. And you can choose to bend your elbow like that, or you can slide your hand along the chair. And then a little bit of an addition is you could keep your hips stacked or really push your hips away from the chair as you go. And they're all absolutely excellent. That helps someone to personalize their experience, to know that they don't have to be so rigid. And then here, let's point your, actually, you know what? Move your left knee forward a little bit, Jenny. Can you see that they're uneven?
That better?
Yeah, I don't know if you could see, but the left knee was back a little bit, and I saw it at the hip first, but it's just a good point to know that I saw it at the hip, and I was about to just tell you to move your hip, but then I realized that your knee was further back, which is going to make your hip further back. So honing in on something specific is great, but take a quick glance around, because if she was standing, and I saw that in her hips and her feet were this uneven, moving her foot might change it at the hip. And this goes back to foundational stance. If the knees are off or the feet are off, that trickles up. So we're just always looking, what do I see and what's the big picture and how can I most efficiently get a result that's going to work better for my student? Right, we'll do just a few more of these, and think of your knees as being your feet. So you're rooting down through your knees to rise up away from them. Yeah. Did that give you a little bit more length?
Yeah.
Because we could just look at this and see upper body, side body moving. But if there's not a connection from what's really mobile to what is hopefully very stable, right? Our foundation, we want to find stability so that there's mobility elsewhere. And that means that in a handstand, your hands are your stability and maybe your legs are your mobility. So it always varies on what stance we're in. Beautiful, Jenny. And then keep pointing your left hip bone forward towards me. Yeah. And what I'm thinking there is I want headlights or laser beams on the hip bones going straight forward, not at any angle. And that means that we're really in the side body. Beautiful. Let's hold down on this next one. Imagine I'm there pushing your top shoulder back You can either look down or stay forward. You could also bend your top elbow and place your hand behind your head if that feels more supportive, and then do a few pulses down. Beautiful. Remove as much tension as you can from your bottom shoulder. Perfect. 3, 2, 1, and then rise up and lower your arms down. Jenny, scooch a little bit further away from the chair, and now step your right foot up onto the chair, knee bent, facing the ceiling. Great. So I learned from the last dance, and we can just change it, which is the great part of a live class, is it gets changed based on who you're teaching, not a fictitious human. And then bring your hands to your hips and try to point your right hip forward. Yeah, and you might notice, obviously, when our leg is bent, there's more tension because there's the tissue from the leg and the glute and the hip. So you can actively, as you're pointing that hip forward, think of pushing it down so there's a little more space. And that's Jenny's hands on her own body, so she's going to already trust herself there. It's not foreign. She's touched herself before, and that means she gets to really have be a witness to what's happening through her own touch. Perfect. Let's bring your hands behind your head, actively press your head back, pull your elbows wide, and lift up through the crown of your head. Let's side bend down, elbow goes inside your leg, and then lift back up. Perfect. Inhale, lower, and then exhale, lift. As you lower down, keep pushing your head back into your hands. Beautiful. Let's try 3 more. Good. And are you feeling the obliques here too? Yeah. Perfect. And let's stay down on this next one. Lower your right hand down to the chair. Good. Perfect. And then little pulses down, bending into your bottom elbow. Your choice to keep your top hand behind your head or stretch it out long. Yeah. For me, that always intensifies it when you stretch the top arm long. And you may even feel it, like, do you feel this in your left lower back?
Yes.
That's a really exciting thing, because one of the top feelings of tension or places of tension is lower back. So by guiding someone into a side bend, you're really able to access that area in a way that is unusual or rarely experienced. Perfect, Jenny. Come on up all the way. Relax your arms and extend your leg onto the chair. So bent leg straightens. Perfect. Roll the shoulders for a moment, stacking your left outer hip over your left outer knee. Yeah. And then take your right heel of your hand onto your right hip flexor or hip crease and just press down. Think of like kneading dough. And think of not just moving the tension or the tissue at the hip, but lengthening your right waist. By lowering the hip, the waist gets a little bit more length. Yeah. And because of the height of the chair, we can see that Jenny's hips are getting more and more even, which is great. She's in this side stretch, she's active, but we're able to use the chair to help her create that feeling, which would not be possible if she was standing and balancing her leg. The chair can take some of the weight. So again, when we use the towel, it's to elongate the arm so that she can do something different. When we use the chair, it's to bring the floor to Jenny so that she can experience the hip shifting without having to hold a ton of weight herself. And that will translate when we try this shape without the props. So now let's bring your hands behind your head. Same thing, press head back, pull elbows wide, and then lengthen your elbow towards the back of the chair and then rise back up. Great. Lengthen, pulling through the elbow to pull length through your waist, and then come on up. Good, 2 more. Good, and Jenny, do you also feel your inner thigh on the extended leg?
Yes.
And here we're looking for Jenny's knee to point up to the ceiling. It could accidentally shift to being forward. She's in perfect alignment, but knowing where we want the bony landmarks is really useful. Then one more time, lengthen out. Now lower your bottom forearm to the chair, stretch your top arm overhead, reaching towards the chair, and then just do a few pulses there, as if I have your wrist like in tug of war and I'm Pulling it. Yes. Good. Point your right hip bone towards me slightly. Yeah. And what I saw is that that opened up your left side body. Yay. Good. 3, 2, 1. Rise up all the way. Lower your arms down. And then let's grab onto the towel. We're going to do that same placement with the towel underneath the sole of your foot. Good. And then lower or reach your top arm overhead to grab the ends of the towel. And your bottom arm, you can press your hand or forearm into the chair. Take a few rotations of opening up the top shoulder. And this is where you can also assess if you're grabbing onto the towel in a way that feels good, or maybe you feel like you're going to slip. It's best earlier on to adjust props so they're not distracting. From there, start to straighten your bottom leg out by kicking into the towel. Awesome. And then lower down. And again, you can assess and adjust your hand placement on the towel. Yeah, that looks great. Nice. And once Jenny's moving, she's making her own adjustments. And that can only happen if I'm not speaking at every moment. Doesn't mean I don't have cues I want to give, but I want each student to have that ability to play and to say, oh, maybe I want to shift X, Y, or Z. Good. From here, keep your leg lifted. And then start to lift the leg a little bit more through the strength of your arm. And you can press into the chair just like you're doing to lift your torso a bit more. Nice. If possible, press your head back. Yeah. If possible, being super key. 3, 2, 1. And now bend your knee, lower your foot down, release the towel, relax your arms, and step your foot down. Awesome. How are you feeling?
Good. That was fun.
Yay. Okay, let's come on up to standing and move the chair to the other end of the mat, but keep it facing the way it's facing because I have an idea for how to get into this. Yeah, great. So stand with your left outer hip. Oh, and Jenny, could you adjust the camera just a little bit so I don't lose you? Great. Let's place your first leg, your left foot, with the sole of the foot on the top of the chair. Great. Now, I know that Jenny can do this, but if I was unsure or if I knew that she couldn't have her leg that high, we could set up for this with the chair turned the other way and her foot on the lower level or on the seat. But I had a feeling, and does that feel okay to you, Jenny?
Yeah.
Okay. Much like we did earlier, slide your left arm inside your left leg, and then just take a moment, stretch your right hand behind your head, do a few pulses to really pulses down, exactly, to open up your right side body. Good. Nice. Now place your left hand on the top of the chair on the inside of your foot. Reach your right hand overhead and try to grab onto your ankle. Yes, and you can reach in front, totally. Once you have your ankle, you're going to, like you're playing peekaboo, start to lift your leg up and push your left shoulder into your leg. Yes, great, Jenny. From here, lift through your breastbone and start to pulse your leg closer to you like we did with the towel. That's amazing. You're amazing. Lifting up, pulsing, 3, 2. Now hold for just a moment. If you want, ground down through your standing leg, lift from your breastbone, and you could lift your left arm even for a moment. Yeah, it happened. And then lower your hand down, bend your top leg, place your foot on the chair, and release down from there.
Ooh,
How exciting.
that was exciting.
That was amazing. Okay, let's move the chair to the other side. Beautiful. And we'll set up the same way. And you may find that you want to be closer or further away from the chair. Yeah, and make sure it feels as comfortable as possible.
Okay.
Perfect. And then place your right arm inside, left hand behind your head. Do a few pulses down. And the trick here, and I'll correct this or bring this up now that she's done it once, is can you see, Jenny, that big kind of gap between your right rib cage and right thigh? So when we start to lift the leg, or even now, think of drawing your ribs closer to the right side, closer to the lifted leg. And what that will mean is, instead of having the ribs kind of run from this shape and the ribs going outside of your hip, we start to create this alignment.
Okay.
Because if I'm here, which is great, my ribs are kind of out of alignment. By finding a lift and trying to move my ribs towards my leg, there becomes a bit more equilibrium. So a challenge over time would be to do this pose, and once I start to notice the winging, correct it, and maybe the leg is lifted only to here, and we start to slowly work into this. Or we use the towel, which extends the leg so the ribs are easier to adjust. Because just because we can get into the pose doesn't mean it isn't interested in an iteration or a bit of a shift. But for now that that's kind of in your mind, it may change how the shape feels, may change how it looks, it may not. We're going to reach your left arm overhead to grab the leg, and we start overhead and then grab in front when needed, and then start to lift your leg while trying to push your right ribs towards your right thigh. Yeah, Jenny, that's totally different.
Yeah, I feel the difference.
It's amazing. Now lift from your breastbone and do a few of those pulses with your elbow. So even though you're using leg flexibility, the gateway to get there is your arm strength. Because I'm not cueing your leg, where your leg is a bit along for the ride. It's being driven through the strength of your arm. And as you do that, as the elbow pulls, push your ribs towards your thigh. Yes. Hold on, I'm going to take a quick photo for you. 3, lift your chest. 2, pull and hold with the leg. Yeah. Excellent. Amazing, amazing, amazing. And then slowly lower your hand to the chair, lower your foot to the chair. Release your hand, step your foot down, and let's turn the chair back to, or just turn it. So, yes, perfect. And then come to sit on the chair and do a few lifts and lowers of the shoulders. Eyes can be open or closed. And circle back to that mindset mantra, I can do more than I know. And see how that feels in your body at this moment versus when we got moving about 40 minutes ago. And that's something that a client never, ever has to share with you. The reason we come back often to the beginning of class, both physically and mindset-wise, is because it's almost impossible to not feel different at the end of class. But if we skip that, if we don't give ourselves a moment for reflection, we may really underestimate or negate the positive effects. If we don't know that something is nourishing, we feel the nourishment less. There's less of an acknowledgement process. So this reflection, which can take, like it did, 20 seconds, is worth saving time for. Because it's more important that Jenny notices she feels different than me telling her, you feel different, right? You feel better? And to that end, Jenny, how do you feel?
I feel really good. I just feel a lot, actually. I feel my core and my sides a lot, and my shoulders and my arms, and I just kind of have a buzz because I've never done that, and it was exciting.
Yeah. And excitement is a word that comes up a lot from this work, which I love to hear, because I don't know how many grown-ups get to be excited that often. And yes, it's learning something new. I also think it's putting yourself in a position to try something new is an uncommon part of adult life. We're often doing things we're very used to, whether they're tough or easy. And so to approach something new and feel excited after is a huge win. So thank you, Jenny. This was awesome.
Thank you. That was really fun.